Hi, my name is Jeff Hayward. I'm President and CEO of the Heart of Florida United Way. And I have the honor of being joined today by our Orange County Clerk of Courts, Tiffany Moore Russell. Clerk Moore Russell has been very proactive and a constituent-friendly public servant as she has worked hard in making the court system more accessible and understandable for the general public. At Heart of Florida United Way, we've had the privilege of working closely with her, most notably around the issue of evictions, one of the economic consequences of this pandemic. Madam Clerk, thank you for taking a few moments to spend with us today. Knowing
And
how
thank you,
busy and
Jeff, for
overwhelmed you
having me.
are these days, we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for having me with you this morning.
So, Madam Clerk, we have a few questions that we know the public would be interested in. We, as policy analysts and folks who are trying to make a difference in the community, we have some questions that are always our top of mind. We most recently spoke with Jay Mobley from the Orange County Legal Aid Society. I know you know Jay very well. He gave us a quick overview of the evictions process. For context, I was wondering, though, could you briefly share what the eviction process is from your lens, and generally how long it takes from someone to go from stably housed to actually being evicted from their home?
So, Jeff, in Florida, the landlord-tenant eviction process is pretty quick. It is not something that can take 6 months, I will tell you that. And so it's one of those legal matters where the tenants have to respond expeditiously. It's not a situation that you can ignore. So a landlord, though, cannot evict someone without actually filing an eviction complaint. So sometimes people will say they get a notice and the landlord says you have to get out in 3 days. Well, without going through the process and having a court give you a final judgment, that's not legal. So in Florida, the landlord, you must first give the tenant notice, whether it's for non-payment or for not complying with some of the other terms of the contract. Say you not supposed to have an animal and you have a pet and they find out, right? And you have not cured that violation. So there are other non-payment related reasons to get evicted. But let's talk about evictions when it comes to payment of rent. Typically, you're giving a 3-day notice where you have to pay that rent, or else you'll be moving forward with the eviction complaint. And then typically, you have a very short amount of time to respond, around 5 days to respond. And then you also have to put money in the court registry. And then you have a hearing. Oftentimes, you may go to mediation before you actually see the judge, but that can easily take a quick month, depending on the court's calendar, how quickly things are turned around. But it could be a quick month process for a tenant to be going through an eviction process. But if a final judgment is issued and a writ of possession is granted to the landlord, that is when someone will be forced to leave their home.
Oh, so that is pretty quick.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing from you is if you do get any of those notices, as far as the tenant's concerned, do not ignore those notices.
Correct. This is not something where you can say, "Oh, my landlord's just aggravating me." You really must address it, respond to it, to make sure that it's not something you ignore. But I will say the eviction complaint, the landlord must also have you served officially. So that is something that must officially be served by a process server or a law enforcement agency. So, but this is one of those actions where you can't ignore.
Okay, that's good to know. And we do give that advice to folks who call our 211 call center, is that don't look the other way just because there's a moratorium or something like that. You do have to address that.
And
But
it's something I also want to share with you. And let's say the landlord, 1 month they took a partial payment, that landlord actually has to resubmit a new 3-day notice. So
oh,
because sometimes you say you get a 3-day notice and you say, well, all I have is $700, and the landlord takes it. That then makes that 3-day notice void,
okay.
because you now accepted some form of payment from your tenant. And so you have to issue a new 3-day notice and restate what the amount is owed and what you're basing your non-payment on. So that's something a tenant should be aware of as well.
So, Madam Clerk, that's actually my point in teeing up this conversation. Is this is a very complex system. The court system is a very complex system, but we owe you a debt of gratitude because you have tried to take away the mystery and the all of the stuff that we don't know away for the general public. It's a tough environment for a layperson to enter into and try and defend their rights. So we appreciate all you've done.
Thank you.
So, Madam Clerk, we've been dealing with your team quite a lot lately over keeping track of the level of evictions. Your team has been great in giving us monthly reports, or when we need them on the fly, your team's been great in giving us the data. What's the current level of eviction filings versus the actual eviction orders being issued by the judges? I don't know if you have those numbers off the top of your head.
So I have a few numbers for you. So what we've seen over the last several months is we're ranging between 700 to 900 eviction cases filed per month. October, we saw 912. In the month of November, we saw 719. And as of December, what are we, the 17th, 16th, we're about at 404 in the month of December. So that's about a 20% decrease in filings. And I'm hoping that is due to all the efforts and partnerships with Orange County government, a lot of the assistance, and, because of the diversion program. But of course, that's just the first step in the process, which is the filing. So that's where we are today. But I will tell you the number of writs of possessions that have been issued in the last 3 months have been about 384. So that means even though we had that number of filings, that's less number of individuals who've actually been evicted.
So the writs of possession, that term you used, is the actual eviction order.
Yes, that means they have given possession back to the landlord.
Got it. Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. You and I spoke early on several Zoom calls and so forth about the numbers versus what you used to see and what you see now. We know the moratoriums, the various moratoriums, that some have come and gone, but the federal one, of course, is still in place. There's been different interpretations of those. How are the numbers that you're seeing today different than what would have been in a normal year?
So we're still below what we normally would see. We normally range between 1,200, about 1,100 to 1,300, every month. And actually our largest volume months was between June and August. So that was usually our highest month. So we're still below what our monthly average normally pre-COVID. So hopefully doing to all those moratoriums has helped with that. So what we don't know is if the moratoriums did not exist, would that have gone above that number? That is what we don't know.
So we all know the final moratorium that's in place, I'm aware of, is the CDC moratorium set to expire December 31st. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what are you anticipating? What do you think will happen after December 31st?
So I'm hoping that we see another extension, or with the new administration coming on board January 20th, maybe it may be reinstituted because, although I think some of our first responders are receiving the vaccine, it may, I just think we're going to continue to see more job loss, or it's going to take a slower amount, and specifically for Orange County. We have to recognize that a large majority of our population here work in the tourism industry. And what we don't know is how quickly that industry is going to rebound, right? We're talking about the convention center, we're talking about hotels, and all those restaurants that service our tourism corridor. That's a lot of people that from United Way, that customer base, the district that I used to serve, that's a lot of people that, so what we don't know the residual impact and how long it's going to take for those families to actually get back into a stable financial situation, right? And so I'm hoping that we see a continuation. What we don't know is how much our landlords are working with their tenants. That's kind of, we don't know that. There's speculation that if I'm a landlord, I'd rather work with the tenant. If I have a tenant that was already a good tenant pre-COVID, let me work with that person versus trying to find a new tenant, right? And when you think about the finding rental housing, you have to do the credit check, and so now I'm certain many people's credit is not good, right? And so all those things become additional obstacles for new tenants. So I'm thinking, if I'm a landlord, I'm just going to give a personal, and I'm not a landlord, but let's say I'm a landlord, I'd rather work with the person that's already in the home, especially if they're taking good care of my property, have been a good tenant prior to this. I'd rather work with that person than finding a new tenant, right? Now, what we don't know that we can't project right now is whether we may see an impact on mortgage foreclosure. So we don't know the impact of tenants not paying rent on those homeowners. And I'm speaking of not the big apartment complexes, but that person who owns 2 or 3 rental properties that have a mortgage note on those properties. So so it's a lot of unknowns. So yeah, we may see a decline in evictions, but we don't know what that foreclosure numbers may look like if it somehow has an indirect relation to that as well. So
Yeah, well, to your point, we've heard anecdotally that many landlords are trying to work with the tenants just because of what you said. If I've had a tenant for 3 years, 5 years, never had a problem, they're a great tenant, I hate to lose them, and I understand what's going on given the environment. We also acknowledge that this is no fault of the landlords either. They have to pay their mortgage, they have to pay their bills, and we've been careful that we can't vilify the landlords in this case. The banks are calling for their money as well, and some have been able to
they're
work
going to
out
receive their property trim notice from the property appraiser, tax collector, right around this time, right?
Yeah.
And so those all of that is a part of our government. Where that pays into the government taxes, property tax. Yeah, so all of that has a cyclical effect. And so you're right. You can't make villains out of the landlords.
Correct. So you mentioned, you could get evicted because you broke a rule such as no pets or something. You could get evicted in a normal circumstance because you just couldn't pay your rent or didn't pay your rent. You chose not to. This is different. This is COVID related through no fault of anyone. Is there anything that can be done that's unique to this situation if you're a tenant or a landlord?
Well, the diversion program was created to, at least for Orange County, to help reduce the number of evictions here in Orange County as it related to COVID, right? So I think more programs such as that, because I think, like I said, this is going to be around for a while. And so I think, hopefully there'll be an opportunity for this to be extended. I know why the deadline is today, actually, as this is being recorded. And I understand why that is, because there's a deadline for the funds, but hopefully a program like this could be further continued, because we know that there's huge impacts on tenants, even if when the eviction is filed, that follows them. So let's say it gets dismissed and they keep the housing, that eviction case is still in my records. We don't expunge those. And so we all know that many people use my Clerk system as a way to check on people or find out they have a history. And so if a case is filed, the diversion program is to kind of keep those filings from happening, because that follows you as a tenant. It hurts your tenant history.
So that's news to me. I knew if you got evicted, it stayed on your record essentially forever. I didn't realize until you just said that even if it gets filed and then dismissed, there's still a paper trail there that will continue to follow me. Oh, that's pretty interesting. And that's also a mark against any tenant, just the fact that they got themselves in that situation.
And then you're hoping that your new landlord has some grace and is willing to even dive into what happened in your case. But sometimes some landlords just see a case filed and they don't even willing to work with you. Right. So then it's a matter of trying to find a good landlord that's willing to overlook the case, even if it was dismissed.
Wow. So I know, excuse me, when this first started, we were all looking for best practices, and I know your office was as well. I would argue that the diversion program that was set up between you and the county and the bar association, the judges, I've never seen collaboration at that level in any community. So I would point out, if anyone asked me, from my colleagues across the rest of the country, is there a best practice? I would actually point to the Orange County Diversion Program. In your research or your team's research, did you find any other models or best practices that we might be able to learn from in the future?
Not that I'm aware of. I think there are a lot of organizations. The Self-Represented Litigants Network is a great organization that works with a lot of legal aid services across the country, that deals with issues when it comes to evictions, housing matters. And so I think continuing to work with those organizations that look at the legal challenges facing those individuals who have a difficult time navigating the justice system is a great partnership that I think United Way should explore. Of course, the conference was canceled last May. A lot of our conferences but that's an organization that I know my office goes to a lot. A lot of clerks participate in those conferences because you learn a lot about different programs across the country that are trying to work with, different pockets of our society that can't navigate the legal system. And of course, we all know housing is one of those issues. But I think Orange County, is should be a golden child program. And what we learned is one of the things we had during the mortgage foreclosure crisis, there was a similar program created in Orange County where it was, we worked with the Orange County Bar Association, the clerk's office, and the courts, where it was on education, on the foreclosure. It was a huge program. So that's kind of what we thought we can copy that model, right? We knew it worked before. So I think our program is the best practice because we recognize that we want to catch people before it's actually filed in the system. And that's a true benefit of a diversion program. Once you got to actually go before the judge, now you have a case. There's a case number. Like you said, that we talked about earlier, that follows you. So, but I think, California is a great state that has a lot of progressive programs. We actually, the last conference I attended was in San Francisco. So, San Francisco actually is a great city. Seattle are great places that have very creative, think outside the box when it comes to representing pro se or self-represented litigants.
Well, I think part of the key there, though, on that Golden Child program was the collaboration. And
Yes.
again, when you get like-minded people who have empathy for what's going on, no one is pointing fingers or blaming anyone for a situation. It is what it is with COVID. It was amazing to watch all of you come together and particularly so quickly, because we all know government doesn't move that quickly all the time. I came out of government, so I can say that firsthand.
Oftentimes we can overthink a topic.
Oh yeah.
So we weren't afforded the opportunity to do that. We had to quickly, no one wants to have a lot of money just sitting around, and you don't want that black eye that we failed to spend money, right? So. No,
there was certainly a sense of urgency that we all felt. Well, I've said a couple of times, you've worked very hard at making the courts user-friendly, but the law is still very complex. Where can someone seek help if they find themselves facing eviction?
So there's some great community partners in Orange County. First, I'll talk about my Selfhelp Center. And I am proud to say that Seminole County is looking to open a Selfhelp Center. I think that is what part of your United Way network. And so Clerk Grant Malloy actually is modeling my program to open in Seminole County. So Seminole County residents will have that as well in the future. But here in Orange County, we have the Selfhelp Center, and that's not based on income. And I say that because I do want to share, we have the Central Florida Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida and the Legal Aid Society of here in Central Orlando, and those are income-based. So that's why I want to make sure I make that distinguishing factor. So if you make a certain income, you can go to legal services or legal aid, but if you are above their income qualifications, the Selfhelp Center is a great option for those. You're a teacher, or you make $30,000. You're not going to be eligible for legal aid services, but you can come to the Selfhelp Center. We're open 5 days a week. We have lawyers there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for $1 a minute for consultations at 15, 30, 45, or at hour increment. And then we're in Apopka 1 day a week. So that's, if you have questions, you've received your form, you can book that appointment online. And now we actually have those attorney consultations via Zoom. They are virtual. So, you don't feel like coming to the courthouse, and we really want to minimize as many people coming to the courthouse as possible. And it saves you from parking in the garage and paying a parking fee and going through security. So, but that's a great place if you have folks who are watching this who are facing this situation. That is a resource available to you, as well as the forms are available online, and so that you can then respond to the complaint, because you have to respond. And then I also want them to watch some of our previous videos we've done together. I know we have our legal forum on YouTube on our channel to help people explain the process, because oftentimes a lot of tenants will write a letter to the judge, but you have to ask the judge for certain relief. And so those are some of the things that we want to, that's why we do the forums, that's why we record them, so that you can look at your own time to make sure you're asking correctly what you need from the judge.
So we all know anyone has the right to represent themselves pro se. But what I'm hearing you say is, if that's the route you go, at least do your due diligence, learn, seek guidance, educate yourself about the process. And because I know for a fact that if you don't ask for something in specific, or you don't get that question before the judge can't address that. So what I'm hearing you say is, even if you're going in alone, there are resources out there, your office and others, to please educate yourself before you go in.
I would encourage people, don't, you can do it on your own, but prepare yourself. We've given you tools as much as possible to equip yourself to go represent yourself. But I will tell you, we have some phenomenal judges here in the Ninth Circuit. And although they have the biggest hearts, if you don't speak what you're seeking, they can't just offer it to you. That's against the judicial canons. And we don't want to put them in that situation as well, which is why we create the Self-Help Center. It kind of keeps them out of that hard bubble as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've been able to interact with Chief Justice Myers and Judge Dubois and a couple of the others, and I'm amazed at how caring they are, and they will do whatever they can up until that line, of course, that they can't cross. They've got to be fair and impartial, but at the same time, they've been fantastic to work with. So it's a great court system that we enjoy here in Orange County. So a couple of last questions. We're heading into a time where there may be no more eviction relief or moratoriums. There's no more rental assistance, and we may be facing a very slow economic recovery. You pointed that out. What is your biggest fear, and what's your biggest hope as we head into 2021?
Well, I will say my biggest fear is that families will be facing homelessness, which creates an additional burden on the system. That is my biggest fear. And what impacts that have on children, their education, their health, all those other issues that come up that are tied to having quality housing. That is my biggest fear. My hope that we continue programs like the Diversion Program with permanent funding, that it's not tied to just COVID, but a crisis, and we have in the state of Florida and Orange County community action. That is a program that we've had for years, but there's always been a limitation on how much they can help. And so I think, as we continue to address the homelessness crisis and how some of these issues kind of burden that ultimate issue, I think more programs like the Diversion Program are huge in helping stabilize our communities, stabilize our citizens in finding quality housing and affordable housing. All those issues kind of come together. So that's my hope. I think we have great leaders here in Central Florida, and hoping that they will continue to lead the charge and making sure we can have a dedicated funding source when it comes to issues such as this.
Well, I'm glad you pointed it out that, COVID is unique. It's far-reaching, and we get people call our 211 call center, and they're usually a month or two behind in their rent. Now they're calling with 5 and 6 months behind. So I echo your concerns and your hopes that sometimes the phrase we use is, life gets in the way. There's a death in the family, a divorce, an injury, workers' comp issue, an illness, and life just gets in the way through no fault of your own. You find yourself in that situation. It's an emergency, a fiscal crisis. So we echo that concern. Well, Madam Clerk, I want to thank you for your time and your expertise, as well as the efforts you've taken to make our court system more accessible and understandable to the average layperson. We are in good hands with you as our clerk of courts. I've learned that firsthand, and it's been a privilege working with you and your office over these past few months on this issue and other issues. I wish you and your loved ones a very happy holiday season, and we just want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me today. Great dialogue, great conversation, and I look forward to the continued partnership with United Way. I think we have a great organization here in Central Florida, and we are here to serve at the clerk's office.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We appreciate it.
And happy holidays to you and your staff and everyone out there.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.